Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Richie Lunt, aka Screwball, apparently. And on this preface show, myself and my co-host Joey Buchholz, aka Jobu, we'll talk to you about why the show exists, how it works, and what we hope to get from it. So let's play ball. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Joey Buchholz, aka Jobu. Jobu, how are things?
Things are good, Richie. Thanks for thinking of me for this project.
No, pleasure. Just knew straight away after I started speaking to you that it was something that we could put together. So, I mean, hopefully it goes the way we hope it does. Uh, the first question obviously is how did you get into baseball?
So I actually wrote about this in a book I released in 2009. My cousin Lisa took me to the park in 1981, and she found a baseball glove like next to a tree and put it on my left hand. And she had a glove too, and we played catch with it. And I guess she figured that this was somebody else's glove, that we shouldn't just take it. So she put it back and told me if it was here tomorrow that you could keep it. So all night I was praying that that glove would still be there because I loved the feel of it. I loved how I felt using it. And the next day we went back, and sure enough, that glove was there. So she put it on my hand again. We played catch, and then when we got home that day, she took a Sharpie and wrote OUCH right in the pocket. Ouch. And that was to kind of tell me this is where you're supposed to catch it, because maybe I wasn't doing that correctly the first couple times, trying to catch it with the webbing or whatever. And I've been hooked ever since. That was 40 years ago.
Amazing. I see that you tend to find that these stories around baseball, they're also wholesome. How people got into the sport. It's like I really like that story, obviously, and there's more to it than most. But there's other examples of people where they just like, oh, I got a baseball card, and the first card that I got was, you know, this player, and I just wanted to see a baseball game, and then I managed to get to see one on telly or hear one on the radio, and I was a fan ever since. But I like the fact that your story was you actually started playing the game before you started watching it.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I so this happened in 81, and I didn't start like really getting into watching it till 84. Because what happened was in so this happened in late 81, I'd probably say like late summer of 81, then through 83. We didn't have cable or anything, so there wasn't really you know an opportunity for me to watch baseball. So I was just playing it all day, every day for like 2 years, and then started collecting baseball cards and sticker books. And then my dad and mom took me to my first game in 83. It was the year after the local team here, the Brewers, went to the World Series. And then I started to become aware of what like Major League Baseball was. But um, I watched the 1983 World Series on a 10-inch black and white television, um, and I guess started to really understand what this was all about. And then we did get cable in May of 84, and my grandma and I would watch Cubs games every day. This was before they had lights, so they were 1:20 games when they were at home every day during the summer. And then I would watch Mets games at night because they were on another superstation. So Graham and I would watch the Cubs. I would watch the Mets at night or on weekends. And like I said earlier, the love affair is still going strong, going on 40 years now for baseball for me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned about cards and things because I mean, from a British perspective, um, cards were only we used to have like fake cigarette packets, and it was back probably before I was born. I was born in '82, so obviously that makes me 38 for people who aren't great at maths. Um,
Hmm.
and there was a thing where it was still there when we were kids. It's died out a lot now, but you used to get these little white candies, like you'd call them, like candy sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the idea was, I mean, I don't believe this is how they were marketed, or maybe they were, who knows? But it was the idea that they were like fake cigarettes. That's how kids would kind of play with them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was deliberate or not, that's a whole other topic. But you get like a little card inside it, and sometimes it would be depends on what brand that you went with. It would be like a car or like a plane or something like something that the kids would be into, usually boys. And they kind of died out as I was getting older, and they were replaced by stickers. And I think this is where kind of my generation we didn't have kind of baseball cards or anything like that, but we did have football stickers. So I feel like there's kind of a bond that we shared in that. The only difference was your baseball cards were, I mean, you could get them for grand larceny if you stole someone's baseball card. In fact, that happened on Prison Break. The amount of money that some of those rare cards were worth, we never had that. But we had that feeling of opening up a packet of stickers and seeing what players you'd got, and then trading with your friends. If you had, we used to call, well, there was, you'd get the same sticker, and then you wouldn't want that obviously because that was you'd put that in your book already. So and there was a really weird thing as well. I think, I don't know if this is uniquely British or not. You can tell me, but we had this thing called Beanio. It was probably called different things around the country now, but it was a really evil thing. So what would happen, and this is like the British mentality summed up. One kid would come into the yard and he'd be really delighted about all the stickers that he had for swaps. And another kid would notice that he had this handful of stickers, and he would hit the stickers out of his hands and shout Beanio, which basically meant that they were then public property. So
Ah,
people would go and just pick up the stickers that they wanted and go, oh, thanks a lot for that. And it was just a really weird thing that I can't imagine that happened in America. And I feel like that's a uniquely British thing. Would I be correct in that assumption? Or?
yeah. I mean, we didn't do anything like that. I think I remember specifically. So we referred to the cards or the stickers that that you had multiples of. They in America we call those commons,
Okay.
because Topps, actually, the way they distributed cards back then was, uh, you know the so this would have been like 81, 82. Like your top players back then would have been like George Brett, Robin Yount, Dale Murphy. It actually was harder to get those cards because they made less of them. So it was common to get four Cecilio Guantes, or the manager for the Texas Rangers, because they just simply made more. So I remember as a kid, we would bring our commons to school and try to trade to get the players that we needed to complete the set. So remember, they used to have, I don't know if they still do now, but the checklist cards, where it was actually a card for the set that you could keep track. Well, we actually, you know, would write on those checklist cards and keep track of what we needed. So we would bring our commons to school, 10, 15 minutes before classes started, and we would try to trade with each other because, I'd have 6 of this card and 5 of this card, and then Danny and Mike would have, 3 or 4 of these, and that's kind of how we completed our set. But yeah, we didn't have anything like that where we were like knocking the cards out of our hands.
I'm
But
glad to hear it.
that sounds more fun though.
Yeah, fun if you weren't the one holding the cards.
Yeah.
Sometimes though it would happen, and it would be when someone had just got new cards or new stickers and was showing them off, and then you felt really bad. And we also had shinies. So a shiny was like the best one that you could get. So for example, during, I can't remember exactly, but say like a World Cup sticker book, the shiny would probably be silver hologram or holographic background with the World Cup. And that was like, that was the one everyone wanted, or the best players would be a shiny. So it's kind of similar, but not, I would say. But anyway, I believe you support 2 teams, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm from Milwaukee, so I've been a Brewers fan since I guess the first game I went to in 1983, and then the year we got cable, which was '84. The cable guy actually saw that I had that same glove that I found a couple years earlier. Was outside playing. I came in. He saw that I was playing baseball. He literally took the TV guide out and he started highlighting all the games that were on TV. And it was all Cubs, Mets, and Braves. And my grandma was very adamant that we not watch Braves games because the Braves left Milwaukee and broke their hearts.
Oh.
Ironically, my grandfather is from Brooklyn, and the Dodgers left Brooklyn in the 50s and broke his heart. So like that happened to him twice in 8 years.
Them bums.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe because the game, the Cubs were on during the day and the Mets were on at night. I just figured, well, I guess I'm gonna be a Mets fan because Grandma says I can't root for the Braves. And I don't know, maybe Chicago at that point was too close to Milwaukee to like say, okay, this is going to be the team. But maybe it was because my grandfather was from New York, and I don't know, I like the color scheme. I don't remember the exact reasons, but I just became a Mets fan, and I've been loyal to both of those teams, my whole baseball life.
Again, this is something that a lot of British people would have a problem with. Not to say that they'd be correct to, but there's the idea here, and I've never subscribed to it, that you have one team and that's it, and you never have another team. Now, me personally, when it comes to what you'd call soccer, I have multiple teams. I only have one team, which is my team specifically, which is Liverpool, obviously. But when you go to Portugal, I have Porto. In France, I have Olympique Marseille. In Brazil, I have Corinthians. I try and have a team in pretty much every league, and I think it's kind of for the same reason, in that you just want to experience as much of something that you love, and you want to experience it from sort of a different perspective. Because obviously in the AL, the American League, you have the designated hitter, and then in the NL National League, you don't. So it's almost like a new game within a game.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, actually, they were in separate leagues. The Brewers were in the American League, and the Mets were in the National League. So it kind of made it easier for me to have the 2 teams. and by the way, my family and friends have been giving me hell about this my whole life because they also don't like the idea that you have two teams. My family and friends that live here in Milwaukee, they're like, you should be a Brewers fan only. You live here, and all my Mets friends are like, you should just wear the Mets colors and be a Mets fan. But that's actually why I wrote the book in 2008, was to explain that it's, I wasn't born with the idea of I'm going to have two teams. It just happened, and
Yeah.
it's funny because to kind of relate to your football situation with multiple teams. The older I get, the more I just am a fan of the game itself, and stress less and less about the outcomes of games, and focus more on just the experience of listening to a game or watching a game. So there's 30 teams in Major League Baseball. There's probably 20 that I'll root for one reason or another throughout the season, whether it's just a player that I like or to celebrate history of the game. But I want to know what your motivation is to do something like this, because I'm fascinated. I'm the fact that you reached out to me, I'm flattered, but I want to know what your motivation is to do something like this.
It's kind of similar to yourself, as I say there. I don't believe that you just have one team. In terms of football, the fact that I support different teams around the world, I believe has made me more cultured. I've been able to meet people that I wouldn't have met. I've been able to have experiences that I wouldn't have been able to have. And I understand, like you, I was told from a very early age by everyone around me, you have one team and not. But like you, I didn't subscribe to that viewpoint, and I'm glad I didn't, because sport is something to bring people together. And I feel like we need to get away from this notion of you love your team unconditionally and hate everyone else. And, I feel like, certainly not to get into politics, whichever side you subscribe to, we have enough of that now. I don't want that in my life. I go to sport to get away from that. And doing this, it kind of goes back to last year. Unfortunately, a friend of mine passed away. And like yourself, I met him online. We never actually met face to face. Unfortunately, we had plans to, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I never really thought about following a team from the West Coast because of the time difference, and because I didn't feel like, and no offense to anyone, this was my ignorance, not theirs, that I didn't feel like I would fit in with West Coast people. And it was a cultural thing. And for all the way, for as much as that opens up my mind to certain possibilities, I was still struggling a little bit with that ignorance of, no, West Coast, Hollywood. I'm not Hollywood. That's not me. I don't want to follow that team. But then when Crazy Dave, as we will refer to him as he was known, passed away, he was a Dodgers fan. And I felt bad at the fact that the Astros scandal had potentially stopped him when he was with us seeing a World Series. And I just wanted to follow his team and go on that journey that he couldn't. and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was, I can't say enough good things about Dodgers fans now. My perception of them has completely changed. I apologize that I went in with any preconceived notions, but to some degree, we all do. And it was just a very special journey. And people will say that, oh, you're only saying that because they won, and that's why you're a Dodgers fan. Well, here's the twist in the tale. I went on that journey for Dave, and I feel like that journey is now complete. That World Series that he missed out on, I sort of went on that journey for him. And as much as I love the Dodgers and so much about them, I mean, we've spoken off the podcast about Jackie Robinson and how much that means to me, and with the number 42 being retired all around the league, and how baseball can bring people together in that manner and break the color barrier. As much as I love all that, the Dodgers weren't my team. I didn't suffer with those fans for the 30 odd years before that World Series came along. So while I was on my knees in tears, it was because of my friend, not because I'd kind of earned the right, if you know what I mean. So I decided I wanted to go on a new journey, and for once and for all, kind of find maybe one team, two teams, three teams, whatever the case, but find out what it is that makes people fans of the teams that they are. And it's going to be interesting because of the way that we've set this up. I mean, from your point of view, having two teams, do you feel like, you're a more rounded individual because of it? Would you?
Quite honestly, like I'm just, I guess, honest with myself about who I am. Like I said, when growing up, it was always hard because I would be made fun of or told you can't have two teams or this and that. And after I wrote the book, which explained, why it was, I've been more comfortable with it. And, like I said earlier, like now, there's a ton of teams that I root for, just because if I'm watching a game, there's more, I get more into it if I have a horse in the race. So, especially if there's a World Series going on and the Mets and Brewers aren't involved, I, try to invest into one of the fan bases. But I don't know, like I always encourage younger kids to, just love the game with your heart and not be worried what other kids might say. Like, you can have two teams, you can have 10 teams, you could, you don't have to have a team. When I watch college basketball, I'm just watching games. I'm just lost in, the experience. So I'm excited to be on this journey with you, because yes, your initial experiences were Dodgers related, but I'm excited to see where this takes you. As we start featuring different teams going forward, learning the culture, learning the history. And I'd imagine that, this is kind of part of your motivation is, to find out all of this stuff. I would imagine, Richie, this is you learning the game is going to be very similar to like when I became a father and teaching my daughter like the Beatles discography. Like, she, it was all new to her. She'd be like, "Daddy, there's a new record out called Abbey Road. And, like pulling out each record and it's new to her, I think is going to be similar for this podcast, because yes, you're familiar with, all these teams, but there's so much still to uncover. So I'm excited for you and for me to kind of go through this.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I feel like I have so much that I want to learn about the game, and so much to enjoy about the game in the future. But there's, as we've said again off podcast, I believe that there's something about baseball that I can't put my finger on. That I started learning Spanish recently, and it's not Spanish, but it's Portuguese. Like I've been looking into Spanish and Portuguese culture, like Latin American culture as well. And in Portugal, they have a word called, and I'm gonna butcher this because I can't speak Portuguese in the slightest, but it's saudade. And basically the way they explain it is that it's a longing for something, whether it be lost or whether it be something that you can still attain. But there's a nostalgia, but also like a pain. But the fact that you had that pain kind of brings you joy because you cared about something that much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I am with football at the moment. Soccer, to use your vernacular. I'm seeing something change, not for the better, and I have that saudade of how things used to be. And while football will always be a part of me, and I'll always be grateful because it made me a sports fan, and it opened me up to these, new opportunities and experiences. I don't feel like I'm ever going to love the game the way I did. Whereas for baseball, because it's a clean slate, because there's so much that I don't know about it, because there's so much I can learn about it, because it's so accessible. That's another thing. And you're fantastic at this as well. The curation that goes into baseball. There's something about baseball fans, a certain kind of baseball fan as well, like yourself. You catalog everything, and you make it so easy for someone like myself to come along. And if you have that thirst for knowledge, all the information is there. Even if it's not knowledge, if it's just entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's kind of knowledge, entertainment, culture. I want to know it all and get into it all. But it's all there. It's, it's just incredible how many stories there are dating back from like the 1800s and going back to the Negro Leagues and then Jackie Robinson, obviously, and then I need to learn so much more about it. I'm at the moment I'm working my way through baseball, the Ken Burns documentary, and that's really helping and really giving me a passion for the sport. Obviously, there are names that stands out like Trish Speaker and Christy Mathewson and Babe Ruth, obviously, and then all the Yankees that come behind that, and then further on, Carl Yastrzemski, and we could be here all day. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron. I'm getting there. Do you know what I mean? I'm learning the legends of the game, and the more I learn, the more I want to learn, and that I feel like I've got this unquenchable thirst to understand baseball, but also to love it, because there's no doubt that I was surprised at how passionate I was watching baseball last season, and although it was um, a shorter season, and although that I obviously didn't get to watch every single game, I watched quite a fair few games. I'd say at least 20. Well, more if you count the playoffs. And at the same time, if I didn't see a game, I made sure I watched the highlights. So I felt like I went through what was close to my first full season. And now I feel like that's almost like a pre-season for me, if you like. Now I feel like I'm ready to take on an actual season.
Yeah, I mean, 2020 was very unique. Obviously, a 60-game slate instead of 162. No fans in the stands. It really does. That's a good analogy, Richie. Is that 2020 does kind of feel like a spring training, if you will, for someone becoming a fan, because obviously in regular spring training games there's a lesser fan base, 1,200 people instead of 40,000. So yeah, I can see how 2020 maybe is getting those taste buds excited, but with a full season coming up with fans in the stands, 2021 I think is going to be a good season for you to really dive into your new fandom. Now, tell us specifically what your plan is going forward for these shows. Like how are we going to get you there?
Well, that'll have to wait for part 2 of the episode, because we're on Zoom and we only have a 40-minute limit. So we'll leave it there. Go and stretch your legs, have a drink, get a hot dog, have a little 7th inning stretch, as they say, and we'll come back for part 2.
All right.
Okay, so unfortunately, I won't be joined by Jobu for the second half of the show. We did actually record the second half of the show earlier, but due to a corrupted Zoom file, that won't be happening. So just to finish off with, I'm going to explain what the idea behind the show is, and we'll leave it there for today. So I had the idea of 9 innings. Obviously, when you think of baseball, you think of innings, 9 innings. So I spun the wheel, and the Boston Red Sox were the team that came out, just by chance. It's strange because it is the only place I've actually been to watch a ball game. So anyway, I had the idea that once I had a team to do the first episode for, I was going to stick with that division. The other teams that came out afterwards were the Tampa Bay Rays, Toronto Blue Jays, Baltimore Orioles, and the New York Yankees. So that obviously rounds out that division, and that's the order that we're going to do the show. As I say, completely random. Going back to the 9 innings, the first inning will be payroll. It's a necessary evil. There's no right or wrong answer. Some people want their team to have a huge payroll. Some people want their team to have the lowest payroll in baseball. Some want to be in the middle. It's just something that we're going to acknowledge. Also, a current team rundown will be part of that first inning, and that'll be where Jobu explains to me who the best pitchers are for the team, who the best outfielders are, players that he rates, who's he considers overpaid, etc., etc. The second inning will be ballpark. So as I say, I've been to Fenway Park, so I'll be able to weigh in on that one. But usually it will be me at the mercy of Jobu and what he knows about the ballpark. The third inning will be fans, city, state, and culture. It's difficult to kind of explain that one at the moment, and it will be different for different teams. But kind of, is it known as a primarily baseball city? Is it a state that has numerous
sports teams? Are they known for their passion above sports teams? Are they? What else are they known for? For example, obviously when I think of Tennessee, Memphis, whatever, I think of music as well. So just along those lines. Bad example because they haven't got a baseball team, but nevertheless. Fourth inning merch and uniforms. So yeah, looking at it's part of the game. I like the tradition of the uniforms and how they've changed and how they do throwback uniforms and things like that. So I think at this point it's probably worth pointing out that I'm not rating. I'm not saying one's better than another. I'm just saying what my personal preference would be, and I'm sure Joe will do the same. And then the idea is that I will choose a team based on, after I've gone through these 9 innings, I'll choose one team from each division, and then I'll narrow it down as I go. Fifth inning, food and drink. Sounds straightforward, might be a little bit more complicated than you think. Obviously there's a beer and a hot dog at every ballpark, but there's other things that are exclusive to certain ballparks, and we're going to look into that. Also good to see that gluten-free and kosher options are available at most ballparks. I say most, the ones that I've looked at so far have all had them, so kudos for that. The sixth inning will be in the fifth inning as well, we will look at restaurants and cafes and things like that nearby, and we'll be looking for input from the fans for that one. Sixth inning will be legends playing and coaching. So again, could be here all day. Seventh inning will be legends, but within the media. I'm hoping to, I've been accepted to study media and communications. So obviously that's a big part of it for me, but even before I was going to go to university, I really had a big interest in that. We're going to be looking at things that maybe you might take for granted, like the organist. Obviously huge in the atmosphere of baseball games, and something that does tend to get overlooked. Announcers, obviously everyone knows Vince Scully, just as one example, but there are a lot more out there, and I'd like to give them their due as well. And then just sort of TV personalities, journalists, things like that, maybe famous people who are associated with the club, maybe like a famous fan or something along them lines. It's very pliable how we can do this within these sort of self-imposed constructs, if you like. Number 8 will be historical moments, self-explanatory. Every team has at least one. We will decide which ones we think are the main ones and talk about them. Obviously, we won't do them all because we haven't got enough time. And then we'll round out with mascots and nicknames. Just something light and playful to finish off with. Mascots is a big thing for me, obviously, which is why it made it into the 9. But I think the big thing for me is that we don't have them as much. We do have mascots over in Britain, but they just don't have the same, they're not held with the same reverence, and they don't have the same influence in terms of, we've seen the, or maybe you haven't seen, but watching the Dodgers coach, whose name escapes me now, I shouldn't have brought it up, recently passed away, no, it's gone, but him fighting with the Philly fanatic jokingly was a huge moment, and my apologies for not being able to remember his name, but I've got that many names running through my head at the moment, the amount of learning that I've had to do, and not just for this either, it's like, in everyday life, and also I kind of follow 5 sports, so a lot of names. For some reason Lou Lamoriello keeps going into my head, which gives you an idea of how messed up it is in there, because he's not even in the right sport. But there'll be some kind of mental link between the two. But anyway, I digress. And nicknames is also going to be part of that, as I say, just a bit of fun. There's certain nicknames that I've seen in baseball that I absolutely adore, and no one really does nicknames quite like baseball does. So to be able to look into that and learn more about it, it'll just be a really fun thing to do. As I say, I have no idea how this will go. It's a challenge for me. Baseball, I mean, I've used the word before it, but it does kind of demand more attention than other sports. And maybe previously I wasn't prepared to give it, but now I am. So, but at the same time, and to use the word again, it is going to be a challenge. So I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't know if the end of it, I'm going to absolutely love everything about baseball and just be more into it than I ever have been before, or am I going to come to the end of it and go, I still appreciate it, I have maybe more of a love for it, but I don't know whether it's going to be as important to me as football, or whatever. It's the great unknown, and hopefully with that being the case, you'll come with us on this journey, and we look forward to hearing from a few of you online. I did set up the Twitter profile the other day, which is Screwball Jobu, so at Screwball Jobu. Any questions that you'd have about the show, or if you just want to have a chat or whatever, how Twitter works. It'll work a lot better with you asking questions and giving suggestions and things like that. I appreciate the followers that we already do have. I'm actually going to name a couple of them. I'm just going to get the page up now, because I do really appreciate it, especially when you're first starting off, the people who make the effort. So we've got Bailey von Schneider, we've got Gloucestershire Red Sox. Obviously I've got a lot of the Red Sox fans because, well, I say a lot, I've got 7 followers, but its majority is Gloucester, is Red Sox, because that's the first episode and I've let that be known. But we are going to go through all teams, and I have no favourites at this moment in time. I'm starting with a completely clean slate. Another baseball podcast was Fly Me to the Moon. That's the Frank Sinatra song. Fly Ball to the Moon. And one of them actually just had a birthday. I think it was Matt. So happy birthday to Matt, belatedly. And then we've got the Pesky Report. So thank you to all of you. I'll wrap it up there because I'm just mumbling now. But hopefully you'll come with us on this journey, and we'll see where it goes. So thanks again, and see you for the Red Sox episode.